This is Ryan and Michelle, and welcome to the Celebrate MarriageCast, where we hope to restore and reclaim godly marriages through honest and real conversations.
Welcome to our episode today, episode 42.
42, that's great. Just coming off the 4th of July weekend.
Hope it was a great holiday weekend.
Yeah, hope everyone had a great 4th of July weekend. Still have all their fingers and toes.
Yeah. I don't know why I laughed. That's not funny. I didn't expect you to say that. Yeah. I hope you guys do too.
Yeah.
I hope it was a safe weekend.
Absolutely. So, Michelle, do you like fireworks?
Honestly, not really. I like the sparkler, the cones, like the safe ones.
Right.
I mean, not that they're safe, but
Yeah.
do you?
No, not really.
I didn't think you did. We don't really do a lot.
Like, I used to really like them, and now, I don't know. Now it's just, you just get older, and I don't really care for them as much.
And maybe it's too having kids where it's a little more, you're on the defense too, or the offense. I don't know, where you're kind of like protecting them too.
Yeah.
So it creates a little more of a unrelaxing environment.
Right.
A little more stress.
Yeah. Sorry for that little detour there. But today, Michelle, we want to talk about something very fitting for, the past weekend.
Okay.
We're kind of in summer. And it's this idea of playing with fire.
Mm.
There's a saying, popular saying, and we've talked about this. You're good with sayings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Twist them. But let's hear the saying.
No, but you've heard it, right? You play with fire, you get burned.
Oh, you were waiting for me.
Yeah,
you're gonna
I
get
was
burned.
waiting for you.
You're gonna get burned.
Yeah.
I was looking at the camera. You're gonna get burned. Play with fire. You're gonna get burned.
You're gonna get burned. And that's what we want to talk about today. We're gonna jump into this. We've got a couple of
we have a couple of announcements to do first. We have a great show planned, so we are excited to jump into that. But we wanted to remind you that we do have a brand new Instagram channel, Celebrate MarriageCast, on Instagram. So follow our account there. And we are making shorts, which is super fun. Although, Ryan, this is, I guess, maybe a fun reason for you to go follow, because I noticed that on our last short, it was basically me just, I don't know. I don't want to say making a fool of myself, but admitting to the world about just a situation where I was unkind to Ryan. But here's what I gotta say. The shorts are like a teaser. So you should definitely listen to the rest of the episode to see that I'm not an unkind person. And we did make up, and all is well. Yeah. All is well in paradise.
Absolutely.
So it's just real life. So anyway, follow our Instagram, and Celebrate MarriageCast is where that is. We would love to have you there. Brand new channel. And then YouTube, we are at 40,000, I think 40,000.7. So 40,700 subscribers on YouTube. Wow. Incredible.
Yeah.
So I was looking at our last week's show, and I think most of our shows are like, Right Tools, Right Skills has 9.5. We have 1,000, that is. Authentic Fatherhood, that was a great episode with Robert Lewis, 6.7 thousand views. Your Best Summer, we talked about summer bucket list, not too late to do that. 7.2 thousand. So reaching a ton of people there. Cool. And that's super, super exciting and encouraging. So wherever you're listening, just make sure you're following us, subscribe, give reviews if you're able to. We want to connect with you. And we are on all the platforms. I don't know if you knew that, but if you are listening somewhere where you can't watch us, we do film all of these with video, high def video. So you can watch us on Spotify or YouTube. And then we are also on Google and Apple Podcasts, but those are audio. I'm pretty sure those are still audio only, which I feel like they should update. Video is so much fun. Come watch us.
Yeah.
So then the last thing I want to share with you is our text number. We typically share this at the end of the show. We're moving it up because we want to make sure that you definitely catch this. So our text number is a great spot to send in questions, send in your life transformation stories, marriage transformation, your wins. We want to hear it. We want to share it. We will plug you on the show if you send in a cool win. We really, really do want to hear from you. So that number is 605-951-0110. We'll put that in our show notes like we've been doing every week. So 605-951-0110. And also, Ryan, on that number, do you know what they can do?
What's that?
They can submit a mystery question, which is a new thing we've been doing for probably a month now, month and a half, where we pull a mystery question from a jar submitted by you, our listeners, and we answer it, which is how we got into the whole debacle with the reel that I just talked about. With the that was a question. When was your last fight?
Yeah.
What was it about? And how did you resolve it?
Yeah.
And that's what led to that reel of my shining moment. Just showing you that we're like you, but we are striving to seek the one who is perfect. So we are two imperfect people seeking the one who is.
Right.
So, all right, Ryan.
Absolutely.
Don't play with fire because you're going to get burned.
Absolutely. So we want to dive into this topic of playing with fire and really applying that to your relationships. And Michelle, we were talking and really we want to kind of tackle two, I think, really important areas where as you continue to play with fire, and we'll go through what these mean.
Mm-hmm.
The likelihood of getting burned is significant.
Yeah. You increase your odds.
Absolutely right. So the first area we want to kind of dive into in regards to this, playing with fire. And if you apply this to your relationship, really the company that you keep is the first one. And you can apply that to, I think, work, to social friendships, things like that. Now, what do I mean by playing with fire? We've shared this before. So like for my work, right? Like I work on an all-female team. We have five females and me.
You're very outnumbered.
I'm very outnumbered. So what do I mean by this? We talk about playing with fire and just using this example. If I want to go like with work, if I'm constantly hanging out with my work friends outside of work, one-on-one, that's what I mean by playing with fire.
Sure.
It's not even necessarily, and part of, I think I hear this a lot, Michelle, you've probably heard this a lot too, of like, oh, that's like old fashioned. You can't do that. Like, that's not how things work. Well, the way that I look at this is like, it's not really even a trust issue. It's more so like, why would I continually put myself in a position of getting burned?
Sure. Are you saying that people can't be friends with their work colleagues? And you call them work friends, which I appreciate because our son, our 9-year-old, always says, Dad, say hi to your work friends. So that's kind of a play on that. But are you saying that our listeners should not be friends with their work colleagues who they spend more time with?
Not at all. Not at all. I think it's just like, if I'm constantly going, let's say out to dinner, work is done, and I'm going out to dinner with one of my work friends, the two of us. You can say it's for work, and I understand that. There might be situations that comes up. But if you're constantly doing this week after week or month after month, I think you're setting yourself up to be in that position to get burned. There's especially I think emotionally, where all of a sudden you're moving past work and all of a sudden it's almost emotional connection.
Yeah, I think that's a real danger when a person starts to share emotional things with a colleague or whoever it is of the opposite sex that is not their husband.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When really they should be sharing that with, their spouse.
Right.
Their husband, their wife. Right?
Yeah.
So if I'm having a really tough go and I start to make myself emotionally vulnerable and available to a colleague, of the opposite sex, then I'm playing with fire there.
Yeah.
Because they can't help but then to respond. I mean, they could just say like, hey, yeah, I don't know, talk to your husband. But if they react, then they are now getting emotionally invested in this. And that's a really blurry and dangerous path to cross. And Ryan, we're actually talking next week about boundaries.
Yeah.
So today we kind of wanted to paint the picture of what happens when you play with fire.
Yeah.
Some of these situations. But next week we're talking boundaries.
Yeah.
How do you put up, we're going to call them guardrails. Think of a car going down the highway. You know, if you're on a cliff winding around mountains, we go to the Black Hills a lot. There are some turns out there where they have these guardrails and you'll see some dings on them. Well, you know what? If that guardrail isn't there, the car probably would have gone over, you know, and that would have been a whole worse situation. So how can you put guardrails in your life? That will be next week. So it's kind of fun because we haven't done a 2-part series for a while, but Ryan, I think that's so great is protecting yourself with what you're sharing. And maybe it's just asking yourself, am I sharing facts about something? Not that you can't say, oh my gosh, we got water in our basement and it was really stressful.
Right.
I mean, we're human. We're going to have emotions.
Yeah.
But what are you talking for emotional? When do you feel like that crosses the line?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it when you start getting into, you know, I think especially like the first thing that I'm thinking of is relationship. Like if you and I were let's say having a disagreement and I go to a coworker and I'm talking about this disagreement and how much like, you know, it's impacting me and like emotionally, like really opening up.
Yeah.
Really my heart, my feelings, in regards to something, you know, as intimate as you know, our marriage, our relationship. I don't know. I feel like that opens the door to something that, really should be shared with you.
Yeah. So using the example of the interstate, the wrong turn, if you would have hung up the phone call, gone to one of your coworkers said, oh my gosh, my wife is being so unreasonable right now. She's blaming me for her missed turn when I'm here at work and she's the one out there driving. That would have been a foothold in that door. Ryan, I'm going to read this from 1 Peter 5. It is verses 8 through 9. I feel like this fits in here with where we're at in this conversation. It says, be self-controlled and alert. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in the faith, because you know that your brothers throughout the world are undergoing the same kind of sufferings. I think about that picture of the devil prowling around looking for someone to devour.
Yeah.
You don't want to give him any foothold. You don't want to open that crack. So sharing that emotional, that's just you're opening that door. Yeah.
Yeah. Michelle, you brought up such a great point because it's not that you can't be friends. It's not that you can't have a relationship. It's just I think it's when you open that door, and I that analogy of like a foothold. I think that's so true. And when you repeatedly do this, you know, where it's something that, you know, if you have that one coworker that, you know, you can go to and you know, that's maybe the opposite sex, that you know is going to respond a certain way.
Yeah.
Or, you know, that looks at you a certain way, and you continually keep going back there. It's that analogy. If you continually are playing with fire, you're going to get burned.
Yeah. And I think about even just the differences of men and women. So if you have a distraught woman that's like, you know, emotional or sad or crying, and guys are such fixers that in that situation, that guy probably is going to want to be like, oh, let me fix that. And then vice versa. Like, it's just such a dangerous boundary to cross.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're not being, you know, work fun haters here, that you can have fun with your work friends, as our son calls them, your work friends. They are your family away from your family, but being mindful of that.
Yeah.
And in your example too, Ryan, I think, and we'll talk about this next week with the guardrails, but let's say that people do want to go out for appetizers or whatever. Just be aware of who's there. Is it a good mix of people?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I try really hard to probably this really will share some of the history of it, but this started when I was on staff in ministry of not having one-on-ones with someone of the opposite sex. And usually I can get really creative and find a way to either, bring someone else along or have a meeting of 3 people. I think in all this time, there's been one coffee that I actually was recent, and I was like, is there any way? I was like, what about this coworker? Can they come with? And it was starting to get to a point where I was like, okay, we're just gonna have this coffee. It's 8:30 a.m. coffee at Starbucks, and we had our notebooks, and it was clear like this is a work meeting, but really being mindful of that and trying my best to make it like group things when possible, or just being aware. And I think especially, like you said, the after hours and then what is the context of that meeting,
And we're kind of focusing on work, but I think this also applies to your friendships.
Sure.
I just think like if I was constantly hanging out with your friend Sarah.
Sure.
Sarah's a great person, but like that's just not something that I like that I would do, or vice versa. Like where I'm not just gonna like hang out with her on her own.
Sure. Yeah. Being mindful of who you're hanging out with.
Yeah.
And there's so many other things that I'm thinking here too. When you just going back a little bit, you had said being aware of how you talk about your spouse. I also want to just point out you should always be aware of how you talk about your spouse.
Yeah.
Even if it's not with, someone of the opposite sex, it's just not a good practice to go around bashing your spouse. I think that also opens up a foothold in your heart to go down a really negative trail. And anyway, so don't do that either. But Ryan, I think let's shift gears a little bit and talk about another area. And I think that is really social media. So being aware of who you're following. And this is kind of what prompted this whole episode. There was a really interesting situation that I was kind of brought into a couple of months ago now. And basically somebody that I'm friends with in another state, they had reached out and they said, gosh, thank you so much for your podcast. Thank you for what your church is doing. This is so incredible. But when they reached out, so there was one connection in person, and I followed up a little bit later after the fact, but I could tell that there was a really raw spot there. And I just pressed in a little bit and said like, hey, is everything okay? What's going on? And they'd shared that their husband, there were some struggles going on, multiple things going on, but one of their concerns was that their husband was in dialogue with a ex-girlfriend. So this husband and wife, the husband was in dialogue with an ex-girlfriend on social media. I think she actually had checked his phone, and that's a whole nother, there obviously was like breached trust there, but there was also probably a reason why she was checking, and we're not going to get into that. Yeah. But the fact is she became aware that he was in communication with his ex-girlfriend, texting or social media messaging, I'm not entirely sure, but he, I think he might have even denied it, but she kept saying like, I'm sure it's not a big deal. Like they're just friends in all of this. And I just thought my heart really broke because one of our pastors here, Pastor Reed, has said this before, is that when you're playing with fire in that manner, it's not a matter of if you're going to get burned, it's a matter of when.
Yeah.
And that absolutely breaks my heart because I think you have to remove yourself from those situations. So knowing that if you are in communication, and for some people, okay, maybe it does work if it's, like a long, long time ago. I can't imagine any reason that I would be friends with an ex on social media or texting them and still be in communication. And I don't know everyone's dynamics, and we're probably going to get, feedback on this, but I can't think of a reason that I would need to be in communication with them. And certainly not a reason that would honor my husband. I just can't.
Yeah.
Maybe they're decent people. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows what your story is? But I think that is a really slippery slope.
Yeah.
And it is playing with fire. And I think in this situation too, the wife absolutely did not want it. She was concerned.
Yeah.
So I think being aware of who are you texting? Who are you commenting on their photos on social media? And maybe it's just removing some of those from your contact. We're gonna give you a challenge this week here at the end of this week, but I think that social media can be really interesting for that reason too. And then you're also, if you are friends with like those exes, you're also looking at their life. And I think Satan can do a real number in that. I would imagine it'd be very easy to be like, oh, wow, well, look at what I could have had, or look at what their new, spouse is. Look at that. And that's really dangerous because you all know that social media is a big highlight reel, and only that person knows everything going on. But we've seen it even from within, hearing stories in the MarriageCast that people have been helped with the MarriageCast, knowing that things aren't what they seem. Like most people have things that they're working on.
Right.
So do you have feedback on that? That was just kind of a synopsis of how we got to this show.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said, Michelle, when you read the scripture about the foothold, I think it's so easy to as you said, to look at, maybe you're looking at an ex's, whatever social, and it plants that seed of, oh man, could have been this, which instantly then diminishes what you have, social is I have strong feelings on social, and it's part of why I don't take part in it. But I definitely think there's a lot there that if you really take a hard look of this idea of fire, of even, the people you follow, and it doesn't necessarily have to be an ex-spouse, but, or an ex, whatever, relationship, but of just even people you follow.
Sure.
I think there can start to be that foothold by, well, I'm following this person and, they're much more successful than my spouse, or they're better looking, or whatever it is, or they look like this. I think going back to that foothold.
Yeah.
And I think it plants that seed. And again, I understand it's very much a part of the world we live in. But but also be aware of what you're following, what you're looking at.
And doing a real honest check, a mind check, a heart check, a gut check of what is happening in you when you're seeing what those people are posting. So if you're following, an ex or someone, if they're posting constant vacation photo after vacation photo of them like in a bikini, like maybe that isn't, first of all, it's probably not honoring to your spouse to be like looking at that. And if that's a temptation, just remove it,
Yeah.
Or if, it's a guy and like all of his workout photos and stuff like that, like always posing with his shirt off and flexing, maybe you just need to get them out of your feed so that you are not tempted to go down that trail.
Right. And you've done that, Michelle. I think there's been times where you've said to me, like, I can't follow this person. I don't know what you do then at that point, but
yeah. And that actually, there have been some females that I've just unfollowed because I think it's my own like insecurity, but it's just, I feel bad when I look at your posts, so I'm just gonna unfollow it.
Sure.
People that have painted a really glamorous life, but just knowing that that's, also not reality. It's like, there are just some people that I'm like, you know what? I, for some reason, whatever, and maybe that's just working on my own self, I don't feel good when I see your content. It's really showy or whatever. And I'm just going to remove that. I'm trying to think for guys. I mean, I follow Crunch Fitness, and that's gotten to be a little bit much for me. At first, it was really fun because we joined this gym and they would always repost people's selfies, but I don't look at theirs anymore. It's just been, it's one flexing pose after another, and it's guys and gals, and it's just I don't really care to just see that all day.
But I think, again, like I've chosen not to, but I think there's also a way to be honoring in it.
Sure.
I mean, I look at, what you just said, Michelle, like if you were in there constantly like making comments on guys' photos and like, doing whatever, like that would be dishonoring. So like it don't hear like, oh, you can't be on social. Like that's not it.
Yeah, I think it's what are you doing with it?
Yeah.
And just being really honest with yourself. And that's all this is. It's just a conversation.
Yeah.
We're not saying that you can never be friends with an ex. We don't know your situation.
Right.
We're just giving you our own experiences and our observations. And this is based on the situation that was, a friend had brought and also just our own experience. So I think it's just a really good starting point to have a real honest check.
Yeah.
And just, I do think often what Pastor Reed said though, and I've heard him say this many times, just it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Right.
So asking yourself, am I putting myself in a situation where it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when? And if that's the case, get out, get a big old bucket of water and you extinguish that flame as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Don't let the devil have a foothold. Don't add oxygen to that flame. Don't fuel it. Don't fan it.
Yeah.
Put it out.
Yeah. That's a great word, Michelle. Absolutely.
We're going to do boundaries and guardrails next week. And we hope that you tune in because that's going to have a little more action in real life applications. So we'll share a few more examples and then what we do and how we live out some more guardrails.
Yeah.
The situation. I had one more thought too. This is kind of a extreme example, but I was going to say this at the start of the show, but I truly don't think that two people just wind up in another person's bed. Like when it comes to affairs and things in that matter, I don't think that there's something that just accidentally happened. I really think it's a bunch of little micro steps, one decision after another that lead people astray. So that's what we're trying to bring awareness to. It's just what little steps are you taking that are not going in an honoring direction towards your spouse? If you're going away from your spouse, turn on around, go back towards them.
It's small compromises that are made over a long period of time.
Yeah.
And I think I think that's what it is. Mm-hmm. It's these small things that, and as part of why, like we share two of these. Obviously, there's so many. There's so many. We just picked two. I think of maybe the bigger ones that maybe we've seen. But it's really taking that evaluation of just as Michelle said, like, hey, what compromises am I making? What things are turning me away from my relationship, from my spouse? And I need to get out of there.
Yeah.
I need to turn around, go the other way, and go.
Yeah. Go towards your spouse.
Right.
All right. Well, join us next week. And Ryan, I think that brings us to a certain point in our show.
Yeah. What time is it?
It is mystery question time.
All right.
I don't know if the jar has been restocked or not. I think actually it does look like it looks like there have been some added.
Looks like there's some
I picked it last time. You picked this time. So again, here's how it works. You can submit a question on our text line and we have no idea what these questions say, which again, led us to that really just honest conversation. So we're going to answer honestly and just candidly here. So here we go. What do you got, Ryan?
All right. It's a great question. What would you say is the number one thing that has held your marriage together when things got tough?
I feel like this is the Sunday School 101 answer, but honestly, you guys, Jesus, our faith, knowing that God has gotten us through so much in this true act of surrender. We have, if you've listened to our show for even a minute, you would know some of the stuff that has just happened. within the last year.
Yeah.
We actually saw Tony Bohr, the counselor, the professional counselor that's been on our show a few times, our friend Tony. We've gotten to be friends with him just through the podcast. So he plays soccer. We saw him out on the field, and he was telling us, gosh, I really liked the latest episode of the Celebrate MarriageCast. And he was kind of saying like, where does this stuff come from? And Ryan laughed, and he just said, life every week, and I think I chimed in every week, fresh content, just hand delivered from, the world. But really it's true. There's so much that we've been through. And I think if we didn't have Christ at the center of our relationship, there just wouldn't be a fighting chance.
Yeah.
I don't know how we would do it. So that's my Sunday school answer, Jesus. Can I read the question again just to make sure So what would you say is the number one thing that has held your marriage together when things got tough? Yeah. We also talked about fruits of the Spirit. I think just being gentle with each other too.
Yeah.
Having Jesus in the middle and knowing that like God's got us, but just being in those tough moments, also being gentle with one another.
Yeah. I'm gonna build on your answer, Michelle, and it's that foundation. It's something that we worked very hard even as we were dating, and I think we might get into this next week a little bit.
That would be a great story if we share it.
Yeah, of just really building that foundation very strong.
Yeah.
And part of I've said this so many times, but there is something that really is crucial to having that understanding of being on the same team. And I think that comes down to faith, that comes down to, the fact that Michelle is a daughter of Christ, and to treat her in such a way, and vice versa, So I really think it's that foundation that was built, that we continue to build, continue to fortify, make strong, and really just having that looking at Michelle through that lens, as life happens, as these things come up, I know that we're walking together side by side through whatever happens, and I think it all comes down to that foundation of Christ.
Great answer, Ryan. Yeah, that was good. That was a great question.
Yeah.
Thank you to whoever asked it. And anything else today, Ryan? Anyone add in?
I don't think so. Tune in next week.
Okay. Dear listener, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing in your own relationship, whether you are dating, married for a short time, a long time, divorced, seeking healing, whatever stage you're at, whatever place of life you're at, young or old. We're just so glad that you're joining us. This is huge work that you're doing in your marriage, and we're just really proud of you that you're doing in your relationship. We're proud of you for listening, for working. We've talked about just sharpening the skills, and you're doing that. So thanks for listening today. And we want to say we have some resources for you at celebrate.church/marriage. You can also text in, like we said, a question for us. If you need help or have a question or a thought or a win to share, you can send a text to 605-951-0110. You can also call that number if you want to leave an audio clip. We can share with our listeners just about a win in your life with the Celebrate MarriageCast. Follow us on Instagram. We would love to have you there, and share this episode with your community, because you never know who it might make a difference with, or maybe someone that you have no idea could really use this word. So we hope that you share it as well. And we hope you have a great week.
Yeah, have a great week.